It had been months since fans last saw the sisters together. The world had watched them fight, heal, and grow, but something had changed. Something deeper. As the cameras returned, a different kind of tension filled the air. Tammy seemed quieter, colder even, like someone who had walked through fire and learned to hide the burns. Amy, on the other hand, carried the kind of sadness that sits behind the eyes, the kind that doesn't need words to explain. After everything that had happened, both sisters stood on opposite ends of a storm that neither of them saw coming. Tammy had done the impossible. She survived her surgery, fought her demons, and came out alive when so many thought she wouldn't. But the new version of her came with an edge that no one was ready for. The weight loss had given her freedom, but it had also taken away something, the identity she had worn for years. For Amy, things weren't any easier. Being a mom of 2 young boys was supposed to bring her joy, but the exhaustion, the pressure, the loneliness, it had started to eat at her. She wanted to be strong, to keep her head high, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone around her was moving forward while she was standing still. The family's fame had grown bigger than they ever imagined. Every photo, every post, every word became something for fans to dissect. And with fame came opinions, millions of them. People who once cheered for their success now seemed to enjoy watching them fall apart. Tammy's transformation brought praise and envy. Amy's struggles brought sympathy and judgment. Together, their lives had become a show, and not just for TLC. When Tammy appeared online showing off her new jewelry, glittering pieces that caught the light, fans didn't see a woman celebrating small joys. They saw something else, arrogance, a flex, a sign that fame had gotten to her head. The comments poured in fast. Some called her inspiring, others cruel. Some said she'd changed for the worse. Tammy stayed silent. But behind that silence was a fury no one could see. Because what people didn't understand was that Tammy wasn't showing off. She was surviving. After years of feeling invisible, of being laughed at and pitied, she finally felt seen. But the internet doesn't forgive easily. They wanted humility, not confidence. They wanted the old Tammy, the one they could criticize and feel better about. Amy saw all of this unfold and couldn't help but worry. She knew fame could twist people, could make them hard where they used to be soft. But she also knew her sister, the girl who used to dream out loud, who used to laugh so hard she cried. That Tammy was still there, somewhere under the layers of makeup, jewelry, and online defenses. But every time Amy tried to reach out, Tammy pulled away a little more. Their bond had cracks that no one could repair overnight. Every conversation turned into a misunderstanding. Every reunion felt like a performance. Then came the trip, the one fans couldn't stop talking about. Tammy and her husband Caleb decided to travel to London, something that shocked everyone. After years of struggling just to leave the house, Tammy was suddenly flying across the world. It was meant to be a victory moment, proof that she had made it. But instead, it became a target. Online, people called her out. How can she travel when Amy's at home struggling? They wrote. Why spend money on trips when family comes first? The noise grew louder, crueler. But Tammy didn't respond. She posted her photos, smiled for the camera, and let the world say what it wanted. Inside, though, she was tired. Tired of defending herself, tired of pretending she didn't care. Meanwhile, Amy was fighting her own battle. Raising 2 little boys mostly on her own had taken a toll on her spirit. There were days when she'd wake up, look around, and feel like the walls were closing in. She loved her kids more than anything, but sometimes love wasn't enough to fill the loneliness. She'd scroll through Tammy's pictures, the confident poses, the new clothes, the glow that came from finally feeling alive, and a quiet ache would rise in her chest. It wasn't jealousy. It was grief. Grief for the years they lost, for the bond that once felt unbreakable. When filming resumed, the tension was immediate. You could feel it in the room, that sharp silence that sits between people who used to know each other by heart. Tammy walked in lighter, stronger, proud of who she'd become. Amy greeted her with a cautious smile, unsure of which version of her sister she'd meet that day. The cameras rolled, but the emotions were real. Every movement, every glance, carried the weight of everything unspoken. Amy tried to talk about her boys, about life, about how hard things had been. Tammy nodded, but her eyes drifted elsewhere. She wanted to care, but she was exhausted from being everyone's redemption story. Later that day, during a weigh-in scene, something inside Tammy shifted. The numbers flashed on the screen, and the room erupted with cheers, the kind of joy that once felt impossible. But for Tammy, it wasn't just a celebration. It was proof that she had won a war against herself. Yet instead of pure happiness, she felt emptiness, because success, she realized, doesn't erase the scars. The world might see her as the new Tammy, the survivor, the inspiration, but inside she was still the girl who spent nights crying, wondering if anyone would ever love her for more than her story. Amy watched her sister smile for the cameras, and she felt pride, but also something else. A small stinging reminder that while Tammy was gaining control of her life, she was losing hers piece by piece. The producers wanted drama. The fans wanted raw emotion, but what they captured that day was something deeper. Two women who had shared everything, now standing on opposite sides of a quiet heartbreak. That night, after filming wrapped, Tammy sat alone scrolling through her phone. Thousands of notifications flooded her screen. Some congratulated her, others tore her apart, but one comment stuck. "You look happy, but you don't look free." She stared at it for a long time. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because she didn't know what freedom even felt like anymore. Amy, meanwhile, sat in her living room, toys scattered on the floor, the sound of cartoons humming in the background. She looked at her reflection in the TV screen, tired, worn out, but still standing. And for the first time, she let herself admit what she had been avoiding. She missed her sister. Not the celebrity. Not the version the internet talked about. But the girl who used to call her in the middle of the night just to laugh about nothing. As the night grew quiet, both sisters sat miles apart, each lost in their own thoughts, each wondering how something so strong had fallen apart so easily. The world saw their smiles, their achievements, their posts. But behind the filters and headlines was a truth they both knew too well. Fame changes everything, but it doesn't heal what's broken. And as the next day dawned, the question lingered like a shadow neither of them could escape. When the cameras stopped rolling, who are we really left with? The morning after felt different. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds, and it mirrored the mood hanging over everyone. Tammy had barely slept. The glow from the night before had faded, replaced by a quiet emptiness she couldn't quite name. She scrolled through her feed again, pretending the comments didn't bother her, but deep down, they did. Every word cut like paper, small, thin slices that added up until they stung. The world had turned her life into entertainment, and somewhere along the way, she stopped knowing where the show ended and where she began. Amy, too, woke up restless. She went about her routine, breakfast for the kids, cleaning up, answering messages. But her mind wasn't there. Every time she saw Tammy's name trending, she felt a twist in her stomach. Pride and pain living side by side. She wanted to reach out, to check on her sister, but she didn't know how anymore. It had been easier when they were kids, when a fight lasted a few hours before laughter took over again. But now there were cameras, contracts, headlines, and a million strangers ready to pick sides. The bond that used to hold them together now felt like a spotlight burning from above. Later that week, filming resumed. The crew wanted to capture the sisters together again, that magical moment when family reunites after months apart. But reality doesn't follow scripts. When Tammy arrived, dressed sharp and confident, Amy couldn't help but notice how different she looked. She wasn't just smaller in size. She was harder, distant, like someone protecting something fragile inside. The room buzzed with small talk. But underneath it all was that tension, the quiet unease of two people walking on emotional glass. As filming began, producers suggested a sit-down, just the sisters, talking about their journeys, their growth, their new beginnings. It sounded innocent enough. But words have weight, and once spoken, they can't be taken back. Tammy started talking about how far she'd come, about how proud she was to be alive, healthy, and free. It was genuine, raw, and even beautiful. But Amy felt the sting behind the words. She knew Tammy's success wasn't meant as a weapon, but it felt like one. Because for Amy, every day still felt like a battle she wasn't winning. The conversation turned emotional fast. Tammy spoke about people doubting her, about how she had to prove everyone wrong. Amy nodded, trying to be supportive, but then Tammy mentioned something, that she'd done it without help, that she had to learn to rely only on herself. She had to learn to rely only on herself. That was the moment Amy's heart dropped. Without help? She thought about all those nights she cried in hospital waiting rooms, praying her sister would survive. She thought about the meals she brought, The calls she made, the times she was blamed when things went wrong. The cameras caught it all. Amy's forced smile. Tammy's steady gaze. The silence between them louder than any argument. After filming, Amy walked out before anyone could stop her. She needed air. Needed space. The weight of years came crashing down. Love, loyalty, guilt, everything. Tammy sat there, frozen. She wanted to run after her, but pride held her still. Because for Tammy, showing emotion had always been a risk. She'd been mocked for crying, ridiculed for weakness. So instead, she stayed quiet, letting Amy walk away. Again. Hours later, social media blew up. Fans noticed the tension instantly. Clips spread, comments exploded. People took sides, dissected expressions, analyzed every glance. It was chaos, and neither sister could escape it. That night, Tammy sat in her room, the glow of her phone lighting up her face. Comment after comment filled her screen. She's changed. She's arrogant now. Poor Amy, she's the real one. Each one chipped away at her confidence. She'd spent years building this new life, this new identity, but now it felt like it was all collapsing. For Amy, the storm hit differently. Fans flooded her inbox with sympathy, calling her the good sister, the one who cared more about family. But Amy didn't want that. She didn't want pity. She just wanted peace. And she knew that peace would never come if she and Tammy didn't fix what was broken. A few days later, the producers pushed for another reunion. A private sit-down, no crew, no audience. Just them. They wanted closure, Amy agreed reluctantly. Tammy did too. But neither knew what to say. When they met, the room was quiet, just the hum of the air conditioner and the soft creak of a chair. Tammy looked smaller in person, not just physically, but emotionally. For all her strength, she seemed tired. Amy noticed it immediately. They didn't start with words. They just sat there, the silence saying more than any apology could. Finally, Amy spoke first. Not loud, not angry, just tired. She said she felt like she'd lost her sister somewhere between the surgeries, the fame, and the chaos. Tammy didn't interrupt. She just listened, really listened. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't defend herself. She just let Amy speak. Then Tammy whispered something almost too quiet to catch. "I never meant to leave you behind." Amy froze. Because that was it. The truth hidden beneath all the noise. Neither of them had wanted to hurt the other. They'd both just been trying to survive. But survival changes people. It hardens you, makes you selfish in ways you don't realize. When they finally stood, there were no hugs, no tears, just a quiet understanding that maybe healing takes more than one conversation. Maybe it takes time, and the willingness to try again. Outside, the crew waited for an update, for drama, for something to film. But what had just happened wasn't made for cameras. It was real, raw, fragile. Later that evening, Tammy went online again. She posted a simple photo. No captions, no filters. Just her and Amy years ago, smiling like nothing could ever touch them. Fans flooded the comments again, some cruel, some kind. But for once, Tammy didn't scroll. She turned off her phone, leaned back, and closed her eyes. Because for the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about the show, the fans, or the fame. She was thinking about her sister, and Amy, sitting at home, saw that post. Her heart softened. Maybe they weren't fixed yet, but maybe they were finally facing the same direction again. Still, under all that progress, one truth remained. Wounds like theirs don't heal cleanly. They linger, flare up, and sometimes when the pressure gets too high, they break open all over again. The next season was already being planned. Producers wanted more emotion, more rawness, more of what made the Slaton sisters unfiltered. And while Tammy and Amy smiled for the cameras once more, deep down, they both knew this story was far from over. Behind the laughter, the love, and the fame, there was still a storm waiting for its moment to rise again, and when it did, it would test not just their bond, but everything they had fought to rebuild. The weeks that followed felt strangely quiet. On the surface, things seemed better. Public smiles, polite captions, matching posts that hinted at peace. But beneath it all, something was shifting again. Tammy and Amy had patched the surface, but the cracks ran deep, and time has a way of pressing on what hasn't fully healed. The show was picking up steam, filming for a new season in full swing. There were meetings, interviews, producers whispering about ratings and real emotion. And the truth was, everyone knew. The tension between Tammy and Amy was what viewers couldn't look away from. The sisters didn't talk about it, but they could feel it. Every time a camera turned on, the energy in the room changed. Every shared glance carried the weight of the past. Every laugh felt half real, half performance. Fame had made them visible to millions, but invisible to each other. Tammy tried to drown it out. She threw herself into her new routines, her jewelry making, her content, her health updates. The praise was addictive, the validation almost healing. But it never lasted, because for every kind word, there were 10 cruel ones waiting below. Comments dissecting her face, her size, her choices. People who cheered for her fall more than her rise. Amy, meanwhile, was struggling quietly. The new season meant more time away from her boys, more judgment about her divorce, her parenting, her weight. She was trying her best to keep it together, to smile, to play her role. But there were nights she sat alone after filming, staring at old photos, wondering if the cost of this show had been too high. Then came the scene. The one that changed everything. It started as a simple family dinner shoot. The producers wanted a wholesome moment. Laughter, food, togetherness. A reminder of what made fans fall in love with them in the first place. But life doesn't follow scripts, and family doesn't always fit inside camera frames. Dinner began light, full of teasing and nostalgia. But somewhere between the jokes and the laughter, someone brought up the past. The surgeries, the hospital days, the fights. Tammy brushed it off with a joke, but Amy didn't laugh. She looked tired. Tired of pretending everything was fine. The air shifted. Tammy's words came out sharper than she meant. Years of defense built into her tone, the armor she'd carried since the first season. Amy tried to hold her ground, but the emotion broke through. She reminded Tammy of everything she'd done. Every night spent worrying, every moment of fear when Tammy's life hung in the balance. Tammy said something back. Something quick, emotional, raw. She didn't mean it to hurt, but it did. The words hung in the air like smoke. And once they were out, there was no taking them back. Amy's eyes filled, but she didn't yell. She just stood up quietly. The cameras caught it. That heartbreak in silence, the kind that doesn't need sound to be understood. Tammy's face fell the moment she realized what she'd done. The room felt smaller, colder. The laughter was gone, replaced by that echo of words too sharp to forget. The producers tried to keep filming, but even they knew. This wasn't TV anymore. This was real life unraveling in real time. Amy walked outside, her voice trembling as she told them she was done for the day. Tammy sat frozen, her hands shaking under the table. Everyone around them stayed still, unsure what to do. When the episode aired weeks later, it exploded online. Tammy snaps on Amy. The headlines screamed it everywhere. Clips went viral. Fans dissected every expression, every moment. They called Tammy heartless, ungrateful, cruel. And the thing is, they didn't see the tears that came after the cameras stopped rolling. That night, Tammy cried harder than she had in years. She locked herself in her room, away from the noise, away from the show, away from herself. Every hateful comment felt like confirmation of her worst fears, that maybe she really had become the villain in her own story. Amy, watching the episode from her own home, cried too. Not out of anger, but grief, because she knew Tammy wasn't cruel. She was just lost. The way people get lost when they've spent too long trying to prove they're okay. For days, they didn't speak. The internet took sides again. Fanning flames, neither of them had the strength to fight. Family members called, checking in, offering advice, trying to mediate. But this time, it wasn't about apologies. It was about exhaustion. Two sisters who had given too much of themselves to everyone else and had nothing left to give each other. Tammy stayed offline for a while. No posts, no comments, no updates. Just silence. For her, silence had always been heavy. The kind that makes you face yourself. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who laughed loud and dreamed big before the cameras, before the world knew her name. Somewhere along the line, she'd lost that girl. And maybe that's what all of this was about, trying to find her again. Amy, on the other hand, poured her energy into her kids, into her art, into anything that reminded her of life beyond the show. She needed something real, something that wasn't edited or filtered or cut to fit a narrative. Then one night, Amy saw something unexpected. Tammy had posted again. Just a simple black and white picture. No caption, no explanation. It was a photo of a bracelet one Amy had made years ago. A small, imperfect thing with faded beads and a crooked heart charm. It didn't say much, but it said everything. Amy stared at it for a long time. Then she commented, just 3 words, "I still care." The next morning, Tammy replied with 2, "So do I." It wasn't a grand reunion or a tearful apology. It was quieter, softer. The kind of healing that happens between breaths, not headlines. For the first time in months, both sisters smiled. Because maybe they finally understood. Love doesn't vanish when people break. It just hides beneath the hurt, waiting to be found again. And even though the world still watched, judged, and speculated, for once, Tammy and Amy didn't care. Because beneath all the chaos and fame, they were still what they'd always been. 2 sisters trying to survive side by side, through every rise and every fall. The bond wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was real. And in the end, that was enough. Weeks passed, and something began to shift again. Not in a dramatic way. Not the kind that makes headlines or goes viral. It was quieter, slower, something real this time. Tammy started showing up differently. Not for the cameras, not for fans, but for herself. She began taking walks again, listening to music instead of scrolling through comments, finding small moments that felt like peace. The world had seen her fight for survival. The surgeries, the hospital stays, the impossible weight of transformation. But what people didn't always understand was that healing doesn't end when the body gets better. It just moves deeper, into the mind, into the soul. Amy saw it too, from afar at first. She watched Tammy post little things again, photos of sunsets, old memories, small laughs. It wasn't performative. It felt genuine. And for the first time in a long time, Amy felt something she hadn't in months. Hope. One afternoon, Amy texted her. It wasn't about the show or the drama or the fans. Just a simple message. "You doing okay?" Tammy replied almost instantly, "Trying." That one word, trying, carried so much weight. It meant she hadn't given up. It meant she was still in the fight, still searching for her place in a world that had watched her break and rebuild too many times to count. They started talking again, slowly. Short messages, voice notes, shared photos. Not the deep conversations they used to have, but enough to remind them they were still family. Enough to remind them that love doesn't need perfect timing to exist. Amy visited a few weeks later. No cameras, no crew, just sisters. Tammy opened the door, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was too much history in that silence. Too much pain, too much love, too much everything. But then Amy smiled, and Tammy did too. They hugged. Not the awkward kind you give when people are watching, but the real kind. The one that says, "We made it through." Inside, everything felt different. The air was lighter. The laughter came easier. They cooked, talked, played music. And for the first time in years, they didn't have to be characters in anyone's story but their own. There were still scars, of course. Unspoken things that lingered between them. But neither of them needed to fix it right away. Because sometimes healing isn't about erasing what hurt you. It's about learning to live with it without letting it define you. Tammy talked about therapy, about boundaries, about learning not to measure her worth by public perception. Amy listened, proud but also reflective, realizing she too had been holding on to anger, resentment, guilt. They laughed about the irony, how both of them had been trying to prove something to the world, when all they really needed was to understand each other again. Later that night, Tammy sat on her porch with Amy beside her. The sky above was a soft purple, stars beginning to show. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. For once, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt full, of understanding, of survival, of everything they'd endured and everything still ahead. Because this time, it wasn't about fame or forgiveness. It was about truth. About finally seeing themselves not as rivals or reality TV archetypes, but as 2 women who had lived through hell and somehow found their way back to each other. Tammy looked over and said, half joking but honest, "Guess we're still stuck together." Amy laughed. "Wouldn't have it any other way." The next day, Tammy posted a photo. Not for attention, not for the algorithm. Just a snapshot of that evening. 2 chairs side by side under the fading sunset. No caption. Just the image. And the comments, for once, weren't filled with judgment. They were full of love. People saying they could feel the peace, that it looked like healing, that it felt like hope. Because maybe, after everything, that's what this story was always about. Not perfection, not fame, not even forgiveness, but hope. The kind of hope that survives the fights, the headlines, the weight of the world. The kind that grows in the cracks left behind. Tammy and Amy would still argue, still stumble, still say the wrong things sometimes. But now they knew how to come back from it. They knew that behind every storm, there's still light. And sometimes, that light is just the simple truth of knowing you're not alone anymore. And that's where it ends for now. 2 sisters? Still flawed, still human, but finally moving forward in a way that feels real. Because in the end, family doesn't mean never breaking. It means never staying broken.